I think product ownership is something that a lot of people, find particularly appealing about this kind of role. It's one thing selling it, but actually having, a role as a steward in terms of the brand is really, really important. And like you say, the relationship, getting the buy-in from the brand owner so that things are getting pulled through the converter is really important. So no, that's great. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I think our business is on a very exciting growth trajectory, even in spite of COVID-19. The pipeline for this business is incredibly strong. There has been a delay, I'd say about a 6 to 9 month delay in kind of where we thought we'd be. But nonetheless, I think the reaffirmation from the biggest packaging companies and the biggest brands in the world that we really need credible solutions and innovations in this space, as if anything strengthened our pipeline over the next kind of 12 to 18 months. But it does require end-to-end working. And I know a lot of people, particularly in technical roles, talk about that and say they work across the value chain, but actually they don't. Not to the extent that we need it, which is CMO of biggest beverage company or biggest FMCG in the world, right through to chief technology officer in one of the biggest, if not the biggest, master batch or performance chemical companies in the world, and everything in between. And each one of those teams, each one of those projects needs to link together. We've spent a lot of time building a CRM system and very, very rigorous data around understanding that market and the links in the chain. But we need to bring someone in who's not going to passively engage with all of that data. Just like everybody else in the business, they're going to spot the connections and look at the ways that we can disrupt without short-circuiting in any way. This is the challenge. We've got to maintain integrity. We've got to respect due diligence. But there are certain ways that we can actually put much more pressure on the system and have things working concurrently so that ultimately you can drive revenue a lot quicker. And we're positioned to do all of that. The data and the information is there. The teams are there. We need a leader to kind of come in, join it all together, use the access that we've got at a board level, sometimes even a founder level with some of the biggest businesses in the world, and deliver on an exponential growth trajectory.
I was asked the other day by a prospective candidate, where does the money come from? So if we're dealing with brand owner, converter, that relationship, is the money coming from the converter because it's been spec'd by the brand owner, right?
In most instances, it will come from either the converter, the manufacturer, if it's a film manufacturer selling to the converter, or potentially the master batch producer. So our ideal partner is a master batch producer that has multiple different relationships with the biggest BOPP, the biggest injection molder, the biggest thermoform players, and they will want a license for a particular territory. But what the role needs to do is not just allow that to happen. You have to come in and create the pull, create the downstream acceptance, buy-in, intellectual, emotional appreciation for what the technology can do with the world's biggest brands. And then as the technical side is ready to be deployed, that you've got clarity in terms of the marketing, not just B2B, but actually B2C, and how do you communicate all of this as a brand and ultimately win, what markets, what messaging. And again, we've done an awful lot of work on that, but we need a leader to put it all together. So it's really about selling to the converters, to the manufacturers, to the master batch producers, and it kind of varies territory to territory. But in every instance, there's a brand. And so being able to speak the language of the brands and distill to them the brilliance of the science, but in a way that is simple enough for a marketing team in one of those brands to get their head around, and then allow them to communicate it in a way that gives them the upside that they all so desperately need. That's the real challenge for this role.
And I think you being as passionate as you are about this product and this project really comes through this kind of materials. Actually, one thing I was going to ask, and I wrote this at the bottom of my my prompts here. What was it that drew you to Polymateria?
The issue. I've spent my whole life working in sustainability, even before it was called that, you know, when it was risk management, and then realizing that it needed to be much more core, and doing an in-house role, you know, where you're kind of driving green growth and inclusive growth, and it's becoming a much more mature, robust way that businesses are thinking about purpose and mission, and how that is underpinned in your innovation and your growth story, but even the culture of your business. It becomes all encompassing. But then you realize in an issue like plastic pollution, we don't have a Tesla, we don't have Patagonia, we don't have a Oakley or a Burt's Bees or something we can point to and say that's what good looks like. And it's not just about the innovation challenge, it's about how it's led, the culture in that business, how that business brings the world with it, and how it's funded. You know, the investors that are behind it ultimately need to believe in the disruptive strategy. And whilst a lot of people probably think that's a cliche, it requires an awful lot of thought, and actually it requires an awful lot of experience to effectively disrupt an entire system. And you have to effectively identify where the big points of leverage are in that system, and then you've got to put your resources and frankly everything you've got into shifting those levers. And then you have a chance. And at the end of the day, I want to be able to turn around and say, you know, we've created, you know, a Tesla of plastic, or we've created, you know, something that the world can point to and say that's not just a great growth story and a unicorn, which is absolutely where we're heading, but it's made a big dent in that particular problem. We're not the only thing, but we definitely think we can be a big part of the overall solution.